Welcome back to the Between Breaths podcast. Jacko here, and today's guest is a sports psychologist that has worked with some of the best teams and athletes in the world. And he has come on the podcast to share with you some of the lessons, thoughts, wisdom that he has had the pleasure of developing over the course of the last sort of 20 years, where he started life as a strength and conditioning coach and then has moved into psychology. And this is Chris Bodman. And you're going to love this episode because, just like how I love breathing, everybody breathes. So everybody's going to benefit from breathing better. Just like breathing, everyone thinks and thinks a lot. And Chris is going to show you and explain to you and help you understand how your breathing, just like your breathing is automatic, your thoughts can feel like they're automatic, but just like you can consciously control your breathing, you can choose to change the way that you think and think and use your mindset, use your psychology positively. And he has a passion for, as he says, distilling down what is quite complex, and is even slightly critical of psychology as a whole. In that he says that psychology hasn't done a great job in like promoting itself or explaining to everybody like what it is that it is. So he's on a bit of a mission to distill down complex psychology to very sensible, rational, easy to digest, and importantly, practically apply into our own thinking and into our own lives, as well as particularly obviously with the athlete population he's worked with, to help improve performance and managing stress and getting the most out of ourselves, and that infinite potential that lies within. So you're in for a real treat, and I look forward to hearing what you make of this podcast with Chris. So, but before we just hear from Chris, just going to thank the podcast sponsors as ever. So HMN24 do a whole range of products. The one that I've used, the pre-sleep, I've used the Rise, but the main one that I am a big advocate of is the Hydrate, which is performance electrolytes to help you with your hydration, which if you're anything like me and like to enjoy probably excessively hard training sessions or events like the ultra running that I take part in, and say this time and time again, like whenever I used to run more than 20k, so more than half a marathon, I would suffer with cramps. And when I started utilizing electrolytes, problem solved in terms of that cramping. So I'm an advocate. What can I say? And massive thank you that they provide a 10% discount for the Between Breath listeners of the podcast. So HMN24, if you use code JACKO10, there's a link in the show notes where you can get 10% off any order of your HMN24 products. I'm highly recommended by Jacko and utilized by myself. So I can't give it any better endorsement than that. Like I use it for my strength training. I use sometimes for like just morning hydration. I'll have like a little bit, not like a whole sachet, just use a little bit. Yeah, I can't say anything more about them, that I genuinely use them. I wouldn't promote something on the podcast that I don't genuinely use and feel benefit from myself. And I'm thankful that they also give a little discount for everyone that wants to get involved with them too. So Jacko10 for 10% off HMN24. And you can grab yours once you've listened to this amazing podcast with Chris Bodman on the Between Breaths podcast. We enter this world taking our first breath, and sadly, we leave this place taking our last. And what I want to do with this podcast is to explore what happens between those breaths. I'm David Jackson, Jacko, and this is the Between Breaths podcast. So Chris, welcome to the Between Breaths podcast from your snooker hall. From anyone watching on video.
We were just saying I'm in a co-working space, and it feels like I'm sat in a railway carriage. So yeah, excuse the dim lighting, but we're here.
The gold is going to be in what's in the information, what's in the mind. So, just give the listeners for those that maybe haven't come across your work. I was going to say something along the lines of some of the some of the greatest coaches that are working with some of the greatest athletes in the country and in the world don't have these million followers on necessarily Instagram. So a lot of the time, people don't know who these people are because you're spending a lot of time coaching and less time doing all of the marketing stuff. So just give the listeners a little bit of an insight into just the type of people that you've worked with over your career and the depth that that career has gone through.
Yeah, no problem, Jacko. Thanks. And again, thanks for the opportunity for having me on. It's great. So I guess if we go back 20-ish years, that was my introduction into professional or elite sport. So I started as a strength and conditioning coach, worked in cricket. So I was very fortunate at that time. Cricket
They
was,
don't do S&C in cricket, do they?
well, they certainly didn't.
I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
They
I'm
certainly
joking.
didn't then. No, it was a real kind of a real important time, I think, within the sport that
Yeah.
they were recognizing the benefits of more structured strength and conditioning, and was very fortunate to have an opportunity to be involved almost from the inception of that. So
Right.
it was a cool time to be, like I say, within the sport. I did that for 12 years actually, and stayed within cricket for that period. So part of a really stable multidisciplinary team, and again I feel we made some real good innovation and progress within that, and looking from outside into cricket now, again it's very apparent that that's continued. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
these guys are, you know, serious athletes as they should
Yeah,
be.
I've worked with a couple of crowd. I'm
Yeah.
I was only pulling people's leg about.
But it's true. Again, back then, like I say, kind of again we're saying 20 years, but 20 years ago, that the pre-season was literally kind of rock up the week before the season starts and a few laps of the pitch, and that's that's our winter program done, you know. So
Right.
yeah, things have changed hugely within conditioning, but also within injury prevention around that. So so yeah, that's a good space to be. I guess again during that time as a coach, then I was always interested in how different people responded to different stimulus, and how relationships were different, and how some players seemed more consistent than others, and some seemed to excel and some seemed to kind of fall by the wayside. And
Yeah.
I think, as you know, Jacko, when you're operating at that level, there's not a lot of difference between like the population that you're working with. You know, physiologically there might be some slight difference, but not a great deal. From a technical, tactical perspective, in whatever endeavor you're in, they're all of a good, you know, or an exceptional level of
Yeah.
skill. And so I guess the curiosity within me was, oh, so what does make the difference? What
Mm.
kind of makes it good to great, or great to elite, or again, however, whatever descriptor we want to put on that. And so that kind of took me down this rabbit hole of the mindset, and thinking, is there something there? So almost to enhance my own coaching practice to start with, I just did an undergrad in mainstream psychology, just to, as I say, to understand that a little more. And that was when I became probably more interested in terms of the psychological side of performance.
Yeah.
Uh, I then went on and did a master's in sport and exercise psychology. Again, still working at this point full time as a strength conditioning coach, and then decided just to take that route. So around that time was again fortunate to get a couple of opportunities, kind of practicing as a trainee
Right.
psychologist. Then went on to do my chartership, and since then, so probably the last 8 or 9 years, I've pretty much operated exclusively as a performance psychologist.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's any great coaches are almost, maybe it's not formally psychologists, but like great coaches of understand the athletes, and like you say, it's almost like uh, impossible not to see or be curious. I feel like what you just got, like being curious about, like, why, what is it about him or her that makes them like stand out when it matters, or whatever the thing is. And like you say, you can you can compare, someone can have better numbers in the gym, better numbers on a fitness test marginally, but you like you're saying they're all of a very high level. But then there's just certain things that sometimes, and this is what's probably really, I don't know if it's a bit heavy to start there, but we might do. The the thing that makes the difference between people, I remember like throughout my like rugby playing career, this notion that was said um, around almost that you can't coach that. It's like, oh, he's got it or she's got it, and he has or he hasn't, and that it's what they're referring to. I would understand now as like you're talking about someone's mindset, the psychology of the person, how they deal with pressure, etc. Da da da. And but there was definitely a notion that that wasn't trainable, and I
Yeah.
think that I'm a big believer that like if you can uh, conscious and thinking about it with breathing, right? Because breathing's one of those
Yeah.
things that's also some people aren't there yet to believe that you can train it. But I always say like if you can control something consciously, then you can affect it, and if you can affect it, then you can train it. And I'm imagining then that the mindset and thoughts, yes, they can run away with us, but we can also choose, right, to like change our thought patterns and therefore train it. Is that?
I mean, absolutely. So again, a lot of the kind of myths or misconceptions around this is it is this fixed. You know what I mean? You're born that way, or that's innate within you. And like you say, it's not trainable. Or I'm like this, and so I'm not able to adapt to certain situations.
Yeah,
And again, I think the space that I find myself in now is exactly that. Is to try and take, I guess, similar to you in that sense, to take the science, which again in both of our areas is pretty kind of science heavy or can be
yeah,
science heavy, to distill it down to say, okay, well, here's some rationales too, but here's some practical, usable things to go away and try this out, right? If it, like I say, if people are fixed to a certain way of thinking, then if they don't know an alternative, then they're always going to think the way they think, right? And
yeah,
so the response or the outcome of that thinking sometimes is going to lead to like productive result and
yeah,
sometimes not. And so if I know that that like the way my kind of normal thinking preferences are probably suit me okay for the majority of the time, am I able to detect situations where a slight shift in that thinking pattern may affect what it is that I'm trying to do, and just be situational in that sense. So absolutely, I think it is. I go back to those players that we work with, and again, you see the differences, and oftentimes, again, it's not that intentional on their behalf. I don't think. Do you know what I mean? Like
mm,
a lot of the time, they've kind of found a formula and don't necessarily know or want to know the reasons why that works,
yeah.
but
It
just to
just
go
is
with it.
working.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So again, I think there's sometimes you don't need to have like this thorough understanding as to why it's not as kind of process oriented as that, but there's something around, and again we'll probably talk about it in a bit, but there's something around developing your awareness
yeah, yeah.
to
I think.
then be, if I want to change, then like I say, if I want to influence that, then at least I know where I'm at and where I'm trying to get, as opposed to almost just like finger it. I don't want to be where
Yeah,
I am, but I want, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. There's so much in this as to why I was really excited to have you come on the podcast. And when we spoke off air before, um, just sort of teeing up of realizing the similarities between the work that we do and the experience that we're having, that they're like that awareness. If I think of breathing, it's like a starting point is like being aware. And actually, for some people, just starting to be aware of it makes such a huge shift in their ability to do it well. And I imagine, and then you're talking there about like just actual self awareness and awareness of yourself and the maybe the conditioning that you've been exposed to in terms of your your thinking and how you respond to things. Because without I don't want to turn this into a therapy session for myself, but I'll just share one thing from me that it just kept going around in my head as you were talking. It was like I couldn't get away from it. That I was always told, and it was like people speak like when people almost like speak something over you, and if they're like a coach and you obviously respect them and look up to them and whatnot, you take those things on board and you like inhabit them almost. And I was told that yeah, Jackie, you're a confidence player, and I used to be like, hmm. Like also when, and it was like I would be like, yeah, to be like if the first thing I did in the game went really well, I'm more likely to have a better game. If the first thing I'd do was really bad, I'd be more likely to have a bad game. And that wasn't, and there's examples where that wasn't necessarily the case. But I used to also think like, well, hold on a minute. Like, surely everyone plays better when they're more confident. Like, it just felt a bit like, but I definitely took it on, but it definitely also like rubbed me. I didn't really like it. It rubbed me up a little bit the wrong way. And but at the same time, there were those players where it didn't matter what was happening in even right there on the field, or if they're having trouble at home, or this or that or the other. It's just like when they were on the field, it was just like they just had this like setting where it was just like boom, it's on. And I didn't have that. I had to work very hard to try and explore different ways. I don't think I ever really found my own formula because I never got the chance to work with a psychologist. I never got to understand like how my breathing was affecting my like sort of regulation. Um, and I guess that's one of the reasons why one I wanted to, have you share your insights and why I love to or have a passion for sharing what I've understood now from a breathing perspective and how that can help people on a physical and mental performance perspective.
Again, your story isn't uncommon. Like we're a lot of time we'll put labels on things do you know what I mean? Just to
Yeah,
simplify what that is. So, like you say, it might be that there's a theme of if you start well, then you tend to play better. If you drop the ball first pass, then again you might be thinking in terms of what the consequence of that might be, and so that
yeah,
might affect your play going forwards. And we'll label that as confidence, right? So now all of a sudden you're limited by the belief that okay, I either need to start confidently or if I don't, then again that's probably going to determine what my outcome is, which you kind of speak about it rationally like that, take the emotion out of it, is absolute, like I say, is absolute nonsense.
yeah,
I think what we're talking about to a degree, again, what those differences are, and again, like I say, the thing that garnered my curiosity with that was almost like how are we able to some level be able to understand and potentially articulate what our like ideal or optimal performance state is,
mm,
and that's going to be different for everybody. And so, like you say, those players that appeared to just be able to rock up and do whatever and didn't seem to have a care in the world, again, whether by default or by design, and I'd probably argue it's probably more by default than by design.
yeah.
um, they just like I say, that formula was right for them. The balance was there, right?
Are there, so even though it might not be by design, are we able to look at those people, pull out the common threads and common themes, and then use that to design for
Yeah,
ourselves?
yeah,
And what would the like I had a mate that literally he could be stood there having a laugh with you about something, and they could literally turn around in the next step and just belt someone like
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
And it just had that on the on off switch was just like insane. Um, yeah, what was some of those when you were looking at those
Yeah.
and analyzing those people or those players? What were some of those common themes?
Again, I don't want to harbor it, but it goes back to like having that self-awareness, right? So what would my natural preference be, and what how aligned is that to the requirement as to what I need at this moment in time? Yeah.
Right.
So just by like our uniqueness, then somebody might be more driven towards just doing the thing. Yeah. So I'm just gonna, again, let's use that as an example. But in that instance, I'm gonna go on the pitch and I know what my role is, and I'm just gonna execute the task. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so again, if I play that out to its best, then it kind of gets rid of the noise in terms of, well, if I do make a mistake, then I'm not thinking about what Turnslow's thinking or what the consequence of that is. Again, my strength lies in then, right, just concentrate on that next job, what's required
Mm.
of me right now. Whereas somebody with a different, like, natural preference, somebody who might be more concerned with, okay, like, I've let the team down,
Yeah.
what are they thinking of me, was it,
Yeah.
may be more likely to then adopt certain, like say, thinking strategies that then aren't conducive to that, which then kind of compounds the very thing that they're doing. So
It's
again,
interesting how that is surely a, if it's like when you talk about self-awareness, it's a reflection of how am I, and like you say, like what your preference is. So if I think of just use yourself as an myself as an example, like I do, my personality type is like worried a bit about what people think and da, da, da. So then that, away from sport,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
actually then there's no surprise that then that was also a trait that went through then into sport, like not letting. And it's interesting, isn't it, that like the notion of like not wanting to let the team down, that's like a really great thing. Like
yeah,
that's a good thing, isn't it? But when it can be a strength. So and
right.
therefore I'm very dedicated and very loyal to the team. But then at the same time, when it goes too far, it then becomes the hindrance. That's the
So that's exactly what we're talking. So again, that awareness piece to say, right, how do I normally operate? Okay, and being acknowledging and accepting of that. What this isn't about is saying I need to be someone else, right? It's an understanding to
yeah
say, this is who I am, and like I say, for most of us, for the majority of the time, that's served us well. We don't want to go away from that, right? It's probably aligned to some values that we hold dear to us, and that's how we want to show up, right? That's how we want to behave. That's
How
important.
many people, though, sorry to jump in, but like how many, because I would have been in this category, how many people, sports people that you work with, where they don't actually, we don't know who we are?
No, we don't. But again, why would you unless you're kind of challenged on it or want
Yeah.
to consider it, right? So it's like anything. Like, why do I need to know that? The same with all of this stuff. Like
Yeah.
if I understand, so if my belief is that that's who I am and I can't change, then what's the point of exploring it further? Whereas straight away, if we can say, okay, you're that, but you could also be any of these things as well. If you understand, like, the situations where that might be useful and understand how to apply skills or strategies to be able to transition you around to those parts. So like I say, what this isn't is, like, first and foremost, it's an acceptance to say this is who I am, this is how I operate, and these are the reasons why, and that there's some robustness around that.
Mm.
But then also understanding, okay, when might it be useful? Like, and it doesn't need to be this kind of seismic shifts in terms of I'm this and I need to get to this. Oftentimes, it's just a slight dial up or dial down,
Yeah.
because playing that out as our strength, which goes back to another fundamental part of that optimal performance state, really understanding, like, where our strengths are. If we can keep those as close to that sweet spot as possible, then that's really going to allow us to be able to function as optimally as we can. Whereas oftentimes, and with good intention, we overdo the strength, we overdo that characteristic, which then that's when it becomes the limitation. Yeah, it's not the deficit, it's not the missing piece that is a limiting factor. Oftentimes it's just overdoing or not being allowed to demonstrate that strength in that optimal
Yeah.
space.
Um, I do want to pick your brains on limiting beliefs in a moment, but just to um, the notion of saying, so we need to be like, when I mentioned about like the similarity with this awareness with like breathing. So like, for if I was to say to someone, the first step is for you to be more aware of your breathing.
Yeah,
If that feels like quite a, even if I don't say anything else, the fact that they have the conversation and they're thinking about their breathing, that actually brings up more awareness of it. But if they need some help, it's like they can do some breathing awareness drills where they sit and listen to their breathing, or they use their hands to feel their breathing. It's very easy in terms of some practical things. I can say, right, this is how you're going to help build up some awareness of your breathing, self-awareness of who you are and your thoughts and things, like how, because I could imagine that you could actually get yourself in a bit of a like a
Yeah,
headspin trying to
yeah,
be more aware of
yeah,
thinking.
yeah,
Like, what did I see? Someone, a really good quote from someone that was talking about like, um, I'll butcher it, but it was something along the lines of like trying to control the mind with the mind is like
yeah, yeah,
an oxymoron. It's like a
yeah,
that's
yeah.
ridiculous.
It overdoes, like you say, you then overthink it and come to false conclusions. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's right. Like we spoke about before, the resistance might then be to not want to explore it further for fear of that, right? So
Yeah,
again, I don't necessarily want to know why I respond in a certain way,
yeah,
because if I know why, then that might lead to having to do something differently or whatever. So again, there's somewhat resistance there from some, but again, I don't think I think in a simplest form is to say our personality isn't fixed, right?
right.
So like who we are doesn't define who we are. I don't need to be this all the time. So it's the recognition to say, like I say, for you and I, it's that kind of reflection to say, well, I don't need to make considerable shift because what's served me to now is served me well. But there's going to be instances where, okay, if I reflect on that, and again, this is another kind of part of this equation, I guess, in terms of sometimes we need to kind of unlearn to then relearn, right? So
Mm.
if I reflect on that experience, did that play out how I wanted it to or how I anticipated it to? And if there's some mismatch there, then what might happen if I did adopt a slightly different approach to that? What would happen if I example, like, again, even just from a communication perspective, like take this in any context, right? What would happen if I just listen to understand as opposed to listen to respond? You see what I mean? So my natural preference might be, okay, well, if I'm in a conversation, then I feel that I've got to contribute to that conversation by what I'm offered. But sometimes, actually, it might be useful just to not say anything because that's not what the requirement is. And you can see that for some people, their preference will lead to like, I need to contribute. And for other
Mm.
people, their preference is just like, I just need to empathize or like say, or provide some comfort. And so it doesn't require anything of me. Now, again, we think we're either or, but we're all anywhere on that continuum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's just the detection. So
You can take a conscious, you can make a conscious choice, presumably,
right,
between.
absolutely.
I'm just thinking that's a great, that
Yeah,
exact example you did there.
yeah,
I've done it now where I've jumped in, but before I was like, no, no, I'm just going to actually do what you just said. I'm just going to
yeah,
listen.
yeah, yeah. But you're right. It is a conscious choice. So if I've got the information, then it gives us choice, right?
Mm.
So that doesn't mean that I'm going to affect that choice. That doesn't mean I'm going to do anything differently. It might be okay, but based on that choice, I'm going to continue how I've done, and that probably is the majority of the time. But if I've got choice, then at least it gives me the option. Then what we need to follow that is then how do I action the choice? What do I like? If I'm going to do something differently, then what do I need to do? So again, it's common that people will be like, okay, well, I make the choice to want to do something different, but I don't know how to. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So then I default back to how I always do it because I do know how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, before I, before we ask you about sort of limiting beliefs, which you mentioned earlier, um, I'm imagining there's some similarities in terms of the type of athlete or person or client that you work with. Um, I'm wondering if there's, from what you've already just sort of discussed there, are there any differences within genders where like males tend to be a bit more like this or females tend to be a bit more like that or not?
Not through my experience, and again, I mean, I've had again certainly from a psychological perspective, I've probably had a very equal interaction with both male and female,
Yeah.
and again, I wouldn't say there's any kind of glaring differences there. I think if you were to, again, this is anecdotal, if you were to profile them, if you did that as an exercise, then there might be some more kind of like disposition based themes, depending on what that population was, but generally speaking, no, I don't think there is a great difference.
Okay. So then the other thing I wanted to ask about was the type of client or athlete that's going to seek out a sports psychologist isn't, if I take a squad of rugby players that's 40 odd players or something like that, they're not all, they might have access to, there might be an employed sports psychologist for the team, but it would be optional probably, and only a certain percentage of them would take that up, which is similar from a breathing perspective. It's not like everyone wants to work on their breathing, even though my bias would be like, well, of course, bet you benefit from this, and you with your psychology, you're like, well, why wouldn't you do some of this? It's going to help you to be better, to better understand yourself. And so, yeah, I'm just interested in what are the types of pushback or barrier for people do you commonly sort of see?
I think, again, in my experience as a practitioner within this field, then probably when I started, it appeared to be quite a reactive provision. So
Okay.
oftentimes it would be like,
Yes.
you need to go and speak to the psychologist. It'd almost be prescribed, right?
Yeah.
Like from a coach or
The rugby phrase would be, you need to go and sort your head out, mate.
right. Absolutely. Yeah. Or go and sit on the couch or whatever. You know what I mean? This is kind of disguised as that. And so it wouldn't necessarily be at the request of the player or the athlete. Right. So straight away, there's a tension there to say, right, I don't want to be here. I'm told I need to be here. So what does that look like? So again, I'm not saying there isn't a need for reactive provision. At times there is, absolutely. But again, what I would really encourage is a more proactive approach, right?
Yeah.
Again, I think we had a conversation offline before, and I think our experiences were similar, that if we're faced with a squad of 40 players or so, then again, in my experience, you can almost put it into thirds. There's a third of that number are really receptive to it, understand it, probably have done some reading on it, like, do you know what I mean? They want to learn about it, and they want to explore it, and they're relatively easy people to work with, right? Because they're lapping it up. The other end of that, you've probably got a third that are just like, for whatever reason, again, I don't understand it, or I don't want to understand it, or it's not going to add value to me. Yeah. And then then there's that middle group that are kind of a little bit on the fence. You know, do I want to commit or do I not want to commit? Do I just want to kind of want a bit of kind of exposure to it, or a few touch points, but not be like, so again, I think it's an understanding first and foremost as to what the requirement is. So if I was to go into an environment, like why are you even using the psychologist? And I don't think psychology historically has been very good at promoting what psychology is. And I think athletes or players don't necessarily have a detailed understanding as to how it can like help them in like individually. They kind of know why psychology is useful, but how can this help me?
Yeah. I
And
think
so
the misconception of it would be more so that, like, if you have a problem,
yeah,
then you go and access it, rather than going, you can get a performance benefit from accessing this.
how can I further enhance what I've already got? And so again, in my mind, and again, how I would communicate that is this is just it's another resource, just like
it's another tool.
conditioning coach would be, or your physio would be, or your nutritionist would be, or whatever. But again, so I think first of all is that I also think in a lot of environments, then it's relatively limited in terms of what the resource is. Yeah, so there's very few environments, and I'm talking like elite environments. There's very few environments where psychology is fully immersed within that whole environment or that whole setup. And oftentimes, it's a consultant going in a day or two a week, and then trying to put time into an already like
busy
schedule to say, okay, now, and so again, what that tends to be is like, well, if I can squeeze an hour in there, then I'm going to do some generic workshop that's going to be useful. Now, similarly, my response is going to be to that 40 group. A third of those are probably going to walk out thinking that was useful. A third aren't even going to want to be in there. They're going to want to be outside doing something far more
Yeah.
enjoyable in their mind. And that third in the middle, are just like, okay, well, maybe the next time you come in, I'll engage, or maybe the next time I won't. And so again, I think it's just again, as a discipline, being really clear in terms of what it is, breaking down some of those barriers and saying, again, at times it can be reactive, at times it can be proactive, at times it can be enhancing, at times it whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And then just presenting it almost tailored to that population's demands. You know what I mean? So it's not
Yeah.
to say that you dismiss those that aren't interested, but similarly, is it worth investing all your time into trying to convert those to then that top group? Probably not either. So, but my delivery of information or my interaction with those different populations needs to be different, right? Again, goes back to just like that personality. I need to adapt my preference to then be able to get some response from. And again, that doesn't necessarily, like I say, lead to a conversion of, but
Yeah.
at least it enhances that understanding as to what it could be. Is
Yeah.
that similar to your experience with breathwork?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just making me think of what are that there's certain things that I would say from a breathing perspective, there's certain things that I would say are like rocks that even the third that don't want to engage in it, they'd still benefit from being able to utilize the diaphragm, being
Yeah.
able to control the rate of their breathing, say, learning how to dump CO2 in that type of high intensity environment. So it'd be like, and then the other bits can be a bit like, or something to help them with sleep. And you go like, because everyone's, if you sleep better, you're going to recover better. It's like, there you go. Um, those like, those rocks that, yes, they might not want to engage with it, but everyone would benefit from it. Whereas there's some other layers that go on top and things where you go like, yeah, these are like extra added things, but like they might not be necessarily for everyone. Um, are there? I'm assuming there must be some things that you go like, these are helpful for everybody, and like, can you give us a little insight? Like, what might that be? Something that someone listening now that is like, yeah, well, okay, I'm down with this. Like, give me something like, what, how do I like, how do I get started with improving my like my mindset? How do I get started with improving that self awareness? That's a bit of a blanket.
Again, I think we've touched on it briefly, but I would go back to a strengths-based approach. So again, that's what I endorse. So
Right.
even if you're to ask a lot of people what you're good at, then there's a hesitation there, right? We're not used to responding in a way to be like, well, this is what my strength is, or this is what my USP is. And I don't think we should be apologetic for that. I think it's that having a sense of kind of comfortableness to be, well, this is what makes me different.
Right. So
Yeah,
knowing what your strengths are as
yeah,
an individual.
yeah. So if I know what my strengths are, right, show me anybody who then doesn't want to further enhance those. Yeah,
Is
often.
that a so just is that a my strengths as a human being, or is that my strengths as the rugby player or whatever it is that I am?
So again, it can be either or.
Okay.
I think again, I think it's two separate pieces of work almost, right? If I understand who I am as a human being, then that potentially um, is far more sustainable than applying it to a certain identity. Yeah. So if I can only associate myself as a rugby player,
Yeah.
what happens when I'm not a rugby player? Does that mean I'm like all my strengths, all my superpowers have just
Yeah.
gone?
Yeah.
So it's an application. So I think there's an overlap there. But similarly, there might be components of your discipline that you'd be like, okay, well that's where do you know what I mean? That's where I'm better than somebody else. And so again, how do I further enhance that? I've got this thing that gives me some kind of uniqueness or competitive edge on somebody else. Like I say, I'm pretty sure that most people want to then optimize that as far as they want to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that, Jacket, there's a recognition to say, and especially in sport and performance sport, we always that like the underlying belief is that everybody wants to get to as high a level as they can,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's the case. You know what I mean? I don't think this like again, if you take a rugby example, I don't think everybody wants to then be like 100 caps for England, right? Or whatever the kind of
Yeah.
top of the mountain is.
Or
Some
maybe that though will be what we come on to for like limiting beliefs. Maybe they don't allow themselves to have that desire for that because they just actually don't think that they deserve it or don't think they're good enough, and therefore it's
and I think so again, I think that's reasonable, but I also think there are people in whatever endeavor they're doing is to say, I'm quite happy with that level, right? But then the consensus within that environment, well, that's the level of mediocrity. We expect you to continue up through the structure or through the tree. Whereas again, I know that people working in kind of first class cricket, their aspiration wasn't to go and play for England because they knew if they went to play for England, they were going to be away from home for 300 days a year. And what was more important to them at that point was their young family, and they wanted to be
mm,
there for that, right? So
yeah,
their drive or motivation wasn't aligned to it, and yet, like I say, the narrative is okay. Well, of course, like imagine somebody saying that, like what's your ambition or what's my aspiration? Oh, just to be a relatively average player for the next 15 years. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean? It's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
It's kind of optimal in those performance environments. So again, I just think we need to acknowledge the fact that everybody's motivation or ambition is unique to them. And
yeah,
I think the space that we find ourselves in, then the majority of those people want to like really express that
yeah,
ambition as far as they can. Yeah.
yeah,
So again, if that's the case, then again, my feeling is that potential is infinite. I don't think you can ever hit a ceiling.
mm,
So, like we say, in terms of how we might communicate this to people and engage them in psychology, is just to say, okay, well, if you believe in that concept as well, then there's improvement somewhere. So let's find where the improvement can be, and let's major in on that.
mm. That's quite an exciting. Makes me think my work's like boring in that because my work, if I go like right, we're going to work on the breathing part of it, but when you're saying like, okay, potential is, and that's like the opposite of a limiting belief. It's like an unlimited belief. Um, if the potential is untapped or like forever untapped and infinite, then we can always find something, and therefore the work you're doing with an athlete could be absolutely anything. Not that not that you're going to step outside of your realm of expertise, but you then may help them to go and explore a completely different avenue, which opens up. That must be quite exciting. It opens up like
So
every.
exciting, yeah. But back at you, why is that? Why is that different?
Um,
Do you, does
I guess.
anybody has anybody ever mastered breathing? They've completed breathing.
Um, I was trying to think of a funny answer then. Um, yeah, no. Yeah, no, for sure. But it would be, but I was meaning that just like my little box is breathing, and so I'd be staying inside. I wouldn't. I'd
Yeah.
be trying not to step outside of my, my area of expertise, if you say.
But again, the unlocking of some kind of my discipline might be again breathwork. Like breathwork
Yeah.
is the avenue, is the branch to go down as an example, you know, and similarly, so that's not for me to then be like I've got the answers to all of these situations. It's then like I say, working with people like you who've got that expertise and say, okay, well this then aligns to that thing, and then this is
Mm.
going to be a useful uh, progression in terms of where you're at. But yeah, so in my mind, I kind of see it, not that I play them, but similar to kind of the video game. You know what I mean? If I want to complete the game, then I complete the game. But if I complete the game, there's potential that I can unlock all these further hidden
Yeah.
levels. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so again, it's just that constant kind of unlocking, and the more competent we become in our execution as to that thing, the more I'm able to then do that. Whereas I think what a lot of people want, and especially now, is to not go through the sequence to get to the end. They just want to unlock. They want to unlock and
Mm.
go straight into those behind the curtain bits. Do you know what I mean? Give me the gold. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to put the work into to get to that point.
Um, So, well, let's have a look at limiting beliefs, or unpack it a little bit, and how do we maybe? Um, I'd love to have an insight of people to leave having an insight into, and if it was the only thing they took away, it'd be, I feel, probably like the most important thing, definitely from what I believe in, of how do I release those shackles? How do I like get away from and break some of those limiting beliefs? And something you've already pulled out, or that we've sort of touched upon, the notion that those limiting beliefs may well be, and I know that I've seen it in other people and I've seen it in myself, that they're part of a protection mechanism to like protect
Yeah, yeah,
me, or my current way of thinking, or my ego, or whatever the thing is. But there was something I wrote down on my whiteboard before I did the Snowden 24 event 2 weeks ago, because I had a belief and a plan, and I spoke a little bit about this and wrote about it on social and podcasts and whatnot. That I was going to be able to do something that was actually like statistically 33% more than the year before, which is quite a big jump. And it was genuinely something that was scary, or could definitely fail at. And the thing I wrote down, I think it was maybe after like, I'm not like some sort of Buddhist monk meditator, but I like to sit outside and be still and have a little coffee, and I would call it meditation. Um, and sometimes like better thoughts come to me when I'm not doing anything, for sure. Anyway, the thing I wrote down was, I am a firm believer, or big believer, that we are far more capable than we currently allow ourselves to believe. And it was like, I was sort of like saying it outwardly to other people, but it was really just like, I said it to camera, but I was saying
yeah,
it to myself,
yeah, yeah,
and just trying to, and then went and embodied it,
yeah,
and was like, partly like, was almost like proving my own point to myself.
yeah.
Um, and the thing that like jumps out at me in that sentence is that we currently allow ourselves to believe. It's like we don't allow ourselves to believe that we are more capable than we currently are. And I'd love you to
Yeah.
speak into that if you're in any sort of agreement.
Yeah,
I'm not
I'm
a
in total.
psychologist.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with it. And again, I want to try and kind of present it in a way that's then understandable, because it's pretty complex. A lot of the time we talk about this stuff, and it goes, "Oh, that makes sense." But then, like you say, it's all very well making sense, but you want to then go and do something with that sense that's been made, right? So
Yeah. Or what if someone listening to that could be like, "Oh, that sounds just like a load of BS, Jacko." It's all
yeah,
like,
yeah,
it can. I could appreciate someone go like, I could empathize and appreciate with someone going, "Well, that's just a load of rubbish."
yeah,
You're
yeah,
just like, "Duh, duh, duh," and it's like, yeah, okay.
yeah.
Um,
So
what do we
so
say? Yeah, what do we say to
let's,
someone?
let's yeah, let's unpick it a bit.
Yeah,
So first and foremost, like you say, the protective bit is important to acknowledge, right? So we know that we have, let's just take thought as a concept. We know we have tens of thousands of thoughts over the course of a day. Okay. So again, if I was to kind of use a metaphor for that, it's almost just like the clouds passing in the sky. Okay, so if the cloud is our thought, like more often than not, we're not even aware of these things. They'll just come and go, and be these transient
we don't
bits of
get clouds in North Wales. It's just always sunny.
clear sky. Sorry, yeah, but now and again, so tens of thousands of thoughts, and the majority of which are negative by connotation, right? So again, that's the protective bit. We've got a negativity bias for survival,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah,
goes
yeah.
back to yeah, back from a survival mechanism point of view. So we know that to start with, right? I'm going to have more negative thoughts than positive thoughts. So if I start from there, then okay. Again, it's
It's like
acknowledging
yeah, it's like it's okay. It's
that's
okay
okay,
for that.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right. What I can then do, so the thought So if we go back to that thought, what the thought doesn't control me. If that cloud passes and for whatever reason that cloud just stops in our mind for a bit, right? Again, we're holding on to that thought for some reason. What is it that we're holding on to that thought for? And again, it then becomes my choice to say, do I want to control the thought, or do I want the thought to control me? If I don't want the thought to control me, then I need to let it pass. Yeah, I need to let go of it. And the more I hold on to it, the more heavy, the more robust it becomes, and the more it becomes conditioned in my mind. And that combined with my life experiences then inform my belief system, right? So again, so you know, well, we all know that some of those are going to be pretty ingrained within our mind to say, well, like a combination of all of that stuff, then this is the thing, right?
How do we let go of the thought?
Right. So again, if I'm understanding what the thought is, so first and foremost, I would rationalize it to say, okay, like just be aware of it, be naming it. It's not to say I can't think this. It's
Yeah.
not to suppress it. It's to acknowledge and accept it and say, right, at this point in time, is this thought or this thinking pattern useful for me? Right. Now, again, if that's in the middle of a game and I'm suddenly thinking this, then probably now is not the right time to be thinking it. Right. But it's not to say that I shouldn't be thinking it. When might be an appropriate time to say, right, and I need to spend some time within this thought to just to unpick it and understand it and acknowledge it a bit more. Yeah. So again, it's the detection of, is it, again, almost tick cross, is this useful for me to be thinking this right now? And sometimes that might even be enough. No, it's not. Okay. Then what do I want to think about? Let's think about this next thing. Yeah. And so it goes back to that performance state. Is my state where I want it to be right now? And if it's not, then how might I be able to affect that, right? My state will often determine the story. So if I'm in that negative thought bit, then that's going to reinforce the narrative that I'm telling myself. Yeah. And the story is probably then going to determine what strategy I take, what I then do with it. Okay. So if we reverse engineer that, if I want a different outcome, if I want a different strategy, then I need to start with affecting the state. So if my thought process, and again, I'm just going off the top of my head here, but say my thought process, I'm in this situation, and my immediate thought process or my default thought process is this is the end of the world, right? This catastrophizing thought in terms of like, this is it. What's an alternative thought that might be less negative in connotation, right? Not to dismiss what the significance of that event is, but if I suddenly just reframe that end of the world to this will pass at some point, yeah, then straight away the state that I'm in will determine the narrative. So that, like the narrative end of the world is going to determine what my strategy is, right?
Yeah.
The narrative of this too shall pass is probably again going to determine what I then do with that information. Yeah. If I'm just trying to think of other examples. But yeah, if it's black or white, if it's either or, right? Then again, what would happen if it could be any of this. It could be anything between any shade of between black and white potentially, as opposed to it just being a binary this or that. Then what would happen if I just reframed it to be like, well, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think again, it's that understand. And so, like I say, that's the response we were talking about. Yeah, that makes sense. But in the moment, it doesn't, right?
Yeah.
In the moment, it's just like, but like anything, I think it's just a skill that we need to develop. You just needs to put,
Train and practice.
yeah, you need to do the sets and reps just to see like, okay, well, am I acknowledging this thought? So as an example, if people want to improve on this, then I would suggest that they balance this stuff out. It might be like, and again, I'm not saying, I'm not advocating journaling as the hack, right? We know that that's probably quite commonplace in this part, but we know that there are some benefits in terms of what that process does. So if there's a couple of prompts at the end of the day, just to say, okay, well, what was the win of the day? Like what went well? Okay, I always want to reinforce the things that are going in the direction that I want them to, or where I'm getting some kind of satisfaction or gratification from.
Yeah.
What might be something that's weighing on my mind? And again, just like what's the thought that's just been kind of like playing on repeat?
Yeah.
And again, just naming that and acknowledging it might be enough. But similarly, if that entry is like for 3 or 4 consecutive days, it's probably saying I want to do something with this.
Yeah.
And then to zoom out, the perspective is, and again, like, what is the significance of that win, and that thought? Like, essentially, how does that impact the bigger picture? Like, what am I grateful for? Is this really the end of the world, or not? Actually, do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? I'm
yeah,
framing it like this, but in reality, things. Most other things are going pretty well. This just
mm,
seems to be kind of a bit of an overwhelm at the moment. And so, if I'm to kind of surmise that, it's just like the recognition that we're going to have more negative thoughts and positive thoughts, right?
yeah,
The recognition that if I want that thought to pass, I can,
yeah,
like with condition, with practice, or I can hold on to it and let it weigh heavier, and let it affect me more, and probably then become, like you say, ingrained into a belief system. Yeah. And then, like I say, if I know what an alternative is, if this is my default and this is another option, then, like we said before, it gives me a choice or an action to say, this is what I'm going to do with that information. And then I review that
mm,
and say, that different thinking pattern, did that have a different response or not? And if it did, the likelihood is I'm going to be able to then pivot between it more readily when I need to, right? As
mm,
opposed to just always thinking the way I think.
yeah,
That, again, go back. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And like we've all, everyone has experienced the same way with like breathing, right? Everyone's experienced like um, when you're completely out of breath, like you feel worse. And everyone's experienced that when you're thinking really negatively, you feel worse. And what we're saying here is that like through recognition, through practice, through following a process, you can change. It's a trainable thing. It's something that you can train. It's something that you can get better at, and you can spend um, more time feeling better because you're thinking better. You know, there's one thing that that's like it's undeniable. Like that when you're thinking more positively, you're feeling better, and when you're feeling better, you're gonna enjoy life more and perform better, whatever the thing is that you can do. There's something really interesting that I don't necessarily want to go right down this rabbit hole, but like just linking again the same, like the similarity of breathing is crazy. Like breathing influences the nervous system.
Yeah.
The breathing, the nervous system, and breathing is a reflection of the nervous system. The two are interplay together. Um, my wife's have you used heart math or come across
No,
heart math?
I know. Yeah, I've heard of it, but I've not
Yeah.
used it.
So my wife's done this thing before where so she uses it as a physiologist and um you they mainly use it for like cadence breathing and getting into coherence. So but what's really interesting is it gives you some like feedback on using like HRV basically. And um you breathe in a five, it's a very simple like five in, five out cadence. You follow and get yourself into coherence, and I'm sure the mechanical aspect of how you're doing it is beneficial, etc. as well. What's really fascinating with it is it's a bit of tech to sort of prove what we're talking about. You can get yourself into coherence by following a breathing pattern. And then you ask someone to think about someone that like makes you angry or a situation that makes you like really like cuts you to your core and they drop out of coherence.
Yeah,
And the thing goes from green to red.
yeah,
And it's like your literally nervous system is responding to you changing your thought pattern.
yeah,
Um, and it's like I found it first time I sort of came across that with her. She was like, "Yeah, but you know that," and I was like, "Yeah, I do know it," but like seeing it was just
yeah,
like
yeah.
just
Evidence
took
is
it to another level of
yeah, yeah.
understanding.
I think again, it's kind of that loop, right? So we know that changing our breathing might affect our behavior or might affect our emotion or whatever. So then, like likewise, changing our emotion or our behavior is
Yeah,
then going to affect our breathing, right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Again, you just think of it one way or the other. So
yeah,
I get that, and again, I think this is where like some tech or some kind of output like that is then going to be useful to see that transformation. Again, that's what people. The biggest challenge like a psychology point of view for me, having come from an objective discipline that is strength and conditioning,
yeah,
is
yeah,
it's obviously very subjective,
yeah,
right? So again, we can say all this stuff, and then to actually evidence it is quite challenging. Is that the difference? And that's not
yeah,
necessarily what I want to do. It's not to say that that's made the difference,
yeah,
but in terms of engagement and buying, then people want to know that it's transformative, right? They want to know that if they're going to invest effort and time into this thing, then it's gonna leads to something. And so again, I think examples like that to say, here,
Yeah,
and this backs it up. Again,
yeah,
I think reinforces it. Yeah.
yeah, and just add some weight to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. For people that are listening to this and sort of getting to buy into it and being like, yeah, actually, I want to train my mindset and I want to know a bit more. Like you put some fantastic content out on social media. Like where can people follow and find out that and get in contact with you?
Again, just that is what I'm passionate about, just as you are. Like I say, is distilling some of this like complex neuroscience, right? Like again, it is no doubt, and I don't understand it, but you know, my understanding of it is still very limited, as is most other people's, right? And that's coming from somebody who's spent a lot of time looking at this stuff, and so it's really important to, like I say, to present it in a way that is at least understandable and does make some sense.
Yeah,
And so that's what I try and do, like either through example, through case study, or oftentimes just through kind of visual concepts. I'm fortunate that I work with a like an excellent creative who is able to take
yeah,
all of my mutterings and present them in a way that makes sense to a lot of people.
yeah.
So yeah, so on probably I'm across all socials, but on Instagram I'm at Elementary Performance. So elementary spelled LMNTARY Performance. Um, and like I say, we're really consciously putting out what we think is going to be really meaningful, useful content. Similarly, I'm always open to conversation if people just want to chat this through and see what an entry point is, or if they've got some specific questions, and happy for you to DM me through that, or to
Yeah.
contact me through email, which is chris@elementaryperformance.com.
Yeah, so I'll put links in the show notes to the website to Instagram. So I highly recommend people, listeners, if you are on Instagram, head over, give Chris a follow, and as he says, if you want to get in touch, drop him an email
Yeah,
or slide into the DMs, as they say, and
yeah,
you can you can ask some more individualized questions.
cool.
Um, so thank you, mate, for coming on and sharing sharing your wisdom and your insights with us. I think it's fascinating. I think that the work that you're doing and then trying to, like you say, distill it down so that people can take it and use it, and you're breaking down some of those misconceptions that are there and making it accessible to people, which is it's a credit to your work and to yourself.
Right. Really enjoyed it, Jacko. Thank you.
Cheers, man. There we go. Hope you enjoyed that podcast with Chris. I find it fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I love the way that he wants to share, what he's learned and developed over the years to and make it, easy to understand, and rational, and simple to apply. So that resonates a lot with me. I would love to hear what you think about the podcast. But before you sign off, I do want to tell you about, because you've listened all the way to the end now, a special offer that is coming out. So I have got the 3-week breath hold course that I ran for the first time in January, online via Zoom. A 3-week program, 3-week course, online via Zoom, where it was sold out. And I've had some unbelievable feedback from it. It was the first time that I'd collated together all of the breath holding work that I do with professional international athletes and teams to help improve and facilitate improved performance. But we also look at not just the performance, but the recovery and how to prep for some of the stronger breath holding work, how it can be utilized to help with conditioning, as well as even with things like some of our accessory strength work, say for hypertrophy and building up greater endurance capacity. So I collated all of this together and put it into that course, and it's backed by popular demand. So it is starting at the end of October, 28th of October. There's going to be an early bird offer running through September, but if you are on the email newsletter for Pro Breathwork, that's my website, probreathwork.com. If you're on the email newsletter, you are going to get in your inbox a very special, limited to only 20 discount utilities. Is that the right word? But there's basically going to be 20 available of a super extra discount price, only available to email newsletter subscribers, which will supersede the early bird offer. And you're going to want to get involved in this. So the best price available to the first 20 people, but you need to be on the email newsletter, and that is going to drop into your email box some point in August. And you'll need to be quick because there's only 20 available. So you need to keep an eye on your emails. And if you haven't signed up yet, you need to head over to probreathwork.com and sign up to the email newsletter. Or if you've signed up to the free Foundations of Breathing course, then you will get added. You can click the button like the tick to add me to the newsletter. So you get the free Foundation of Breathing course and you'll be on the newsletter so that you can get that offer in August. But there will only be 20, so you will need to be quick. So I just wanted to let you know. And hopefully you've listened all the way to the end, otherwise you've missed out on hearing about this. So thank you for listening to the podcast. Love to hear about you. Love to hear from you about the podcast itself. So get in touch via Instagram is a great place to do that. And then make sure you give Chris a follow on Instagram as well. Link is going to be in the show notes for that. And keep an eye out on that email inbox for that special offer on the 3-week online via Zoom breath hold course starting at the end of October. I've been Jacko, you've been breathing. I've said it the wrong way around. You've been breathing, I've been Jacko. Till next time, keep it nasal.